Let's talk business. You run a race team. You're building a bike park, own land and real estate. You've got a high performance center in Whistler. What am I missing here?
Now just Crestline.
What advice could you give anyone looking to embark on a less conventional career? Just step outside the mold. I don't know if I can even share this. I might have to remove this from the podcast.
I know, it's like news to me.
Yeah. That chainless run. Did you ever dream that you could win that race?
I love that winning pays me enough money that I have 8 months of off season to then ride my bike. I don't think anything is going to be fun all the time. It's a lot of hard work.
Do you enjoy riding the e-bike?
It's all I ride.
Is it really?
Yeah.
When you lie in bed at night, do you think more about business or do you think more about racing? Aaron, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for flying all this way specifically to be on the podcast.
Just for you, dude.
Yeah, that's not technically true because we're near Leger and you're here for you're going to be commentating on the World Cup. Is that right?
Yeah, we're doing all the Warner Brothers Discovery commentating, doing some track features and stuff like that. So it's been a lot of fun. Kind of mix it up while I'm off the bike.
You're surrounded by it. You're talking about it, but you're not doing it. So just how much are you missing racing right now?
Quite a bit. I think I just got back on the downhill bike again a couple of days ago, actually, and I feel like right now I just really miss riding my bike. I haven't really switched over into race mode yet. It's just I love to ride my bike, and it's been pretty much a year of not really being able to ride much. So finally being able to get on the downhill bike and do full laps last week was so much fun. So I think right now I'm just fired up to spend a lot of time on the bike. And I think as I get comfortable and kind of we got a new bike, new suspension, lots of new stuff. So that makes it exciting too. But I know once I start feeling good and kind of getting up to speed and health, I'm going to start to get a little itchy.
Yeah.
And then racing will start to kind of come into play.
125 hours or around once a year. That's the recommended service interval for a Fox 38 like this one. Or if, like me, you're planning on spending some of the summer in the Port du Soleil, then it could be a whole lot sooner. So to keep your Fox or Marzocchi suspension running silky smooth this year, then check out the Silverfish Service Centre. They only use genuine Fox parts when servicing, ensuring that your Fox warranty remains intact. Season 2 of the EMTB podcast is proudly supported by Silverfish, providing me with all the kit I need to survive a season here in the French Alps. Silverfish are also celebrating their 25th anniversary this year, supplying the UK with some of my favourite brands from the likes of Fox, Marzocchi, 100%, PTs, Michelin, Cushcore, and many more. Right, that's the end of the commercial break. Let's get back to the pod.
Had you got any plan to do any racing this year?
Yeah, the plan originally when I kind of realized how long of an injury my elbow injury was going to be was to try to get back for world champs. But I've had a couple of setbacks along the way and a couple other little weird random injuries as I was healing. So we're starting to get pretty close now. So I definitely can't have any more setbacks. So we'll see. I kind of no pressure. I mean, I need to be kind of up to speed and make a decision in the next couple of weeks because I'm going to have to qualify for the team, and we have U.S. national champs coming up, which will probably be kind of the deciding factor on, the team and all that. So we'll see, but I don't know. I'm not in a hurry. Thankfully, all of my partners and stuff are kind of happy with what I'm doing, and obviously they'd love if I was racing, but there's no pressure from them. They're like, if you want to race. If you need more time, just chill. So yeah, we'll see. I would like to race, but I definitely don't want to come back until I feel like I'm really good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been great to have you on the commentary, and I've really enjoyed your insights. I mean, to get a current racer's insights into basically your competitors has been a breath of fresh air to watch. How have you been enjoying that side of the job?
It's fun for sure. I really enjoy it. I guess I'm pretty analytical when I watch things, whether it's mountain biking or motocross. I watch all those races, and I'm always picking up what the commentators say. And I've always loved watching motocross racing more when you have a rider like Ricky Carmichael does it now, or James Stewart, or in their past there's been David Bailey or Jeff Emig or all these guys. And I always felt like, I mean, I'm a rider, but I feel like they see things that normal people don't see, and that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's just kind of how my mind thinks. So it kind of came natural to me when I watched the race. I'm just talking about the things I would be thinking about while I watch the race. And so I don't really practice, I guess.
No.
I usually will get like, I'll take a couple of notes just because I like to know certain results. I really like to be on track during practice because that's where I'm kind of really seeing like who's doing what for the weekend, how the track's shaping up. That was really hard at the last couple races because I had a little foot injury, so I wasn't able to walk the track during practice. So I was just watching like lots of GoPro footage and chatting to the riders on my team. But yeah, overall, it's really fun. Like you kind of go through the same process during the week, learning the track, chatting with riders. And then when it gets to race day, instead of just kind of sitting in the pits, nervously waiting for my riders, I can actually do something. So it gives me something to do, and I enjoy it.
That's a good point. We'll come back to the team in a little bit. Let's talk business. Now, I own a handful of properties back in the UK, and I know how difficult it is to manage a business from far away. Now, you run a race team, you're building a bike park, you own land and real estate. I've heard about the Ridgeline Retreat that you've got. You've got the High Performance Centre in Whistler, which is something that not a lot of people know about. We'll come back to that. What else? What am I missing here?
Now just Crestline, being an owner of the bike brand. So
Absolutely.
yeah, kind of pretty crazy. Yeah, we got a lot of projects and things going on. It's cool because they're all kind of in the same sphere. They kind of all like, I don't know, like aid each other, build each other. They're kind of all related. So in that way, they're cool. And there's different cool things about kind of each part of those businesses that I really enjoy. You know, some are more like personal, like where you're working with people. Some are more, you know, just my wife and I, like our little project we're working on that nobody else really knows about or will ever know.
Sure, yeah.
It's just our little passion projects, and some are kind of a collaborative thing on both sides. So it's been a lot of fun. I think since earlier in my career, you know, when I started kind of running my own programs or doing my own sponsorship deals, that was something pretty quickly that always interested me, like business and real estate and, you know, all the different things that come with it. I've always wanted to start my own bike brand. So when the thing worked out with Crestline as well as it did, like that was super exciting. That was like a huge thing I wanted for a long time. So yeah, I mean, we're busy, but it's as I transition out of racing, probably the next couple of years, we got lots of fun stuff to work on.
When you lie in bed at night, do you think more about business or do you think more about racing?
I would say the last year, because I haven't been able to race, definitely business.
Yeah.
The bike park probably most specifically, because that's been consuming a lot of time to kind of get that place. We just we bought that place, or we took it over, and then we had a lot of things we wanted to do really quick. So it was just a lot of time. Now we've kind of got a good base there, and it's starting to just kind of like run and do its thing. But yeah, I mean, if I was racing, then I definitely think more about racing, but it's hard when you can't ride for as long as I've been off the bike you kind of almost need to switch your head into something else, or you kind of drive yourself crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the feeling. So let's talk about Windrock. Nashville. What's Nashville like? I've never been.
Nashville's sweet, man. It's, I don't know, we would call it country Vegas, but it's it's kind of that. I guess if you're on Broadway, it's sort of that, but anywhere else, we love it, man. It's a really cool city. We live about 30 minutes outside of the city. We just actually moved south. We were north, and it's just fun, man. Like my wife and I, we really like music, country music, kind of that vibe. It's in the South, so people are really friendly. There's really cool, like architecture, like the old housing down there. And like, it's kind of a big place for design and all that, which we like. Yeah, we had a bunch of friends and family move out there, and it's awesome. We love it. It's about 2.5 hours from Windrock, and we have a little place out there as well. So we kind of do the commute back and forth every week or two, but yeah, we've been loving it, man. It's a lot of fun.
So Windrock. Now, that was an established bike park, is that right?
Yep.
And so I understand, a week after major surgery, you decided, I think it's time that we buy Windrock.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I'm looking for something to do, but yeah, we had been actually chatting with the previous owner about taking it over for probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 months before we did, all the way back to, you know, I guess about 2 years ago now. And it was somewhere I've been riding out at Windrock for probably a little over 3 years now. We bought a house out there a couple of years ago as like a training house where I could stay and ride in the off season, because I felt like it was the best World Cup training, you know, for coming over here to Europe that we could do year round in the States. And so it kind of started there. And the more time we spent there, I loved it. The people are awesome. the trails, the mountain, everything about that place is so cool. And I was just like, man, if it's like, I've dreamed about having a bike brand.
Yeah.
But since I was a kid, all I've ever done really all my time growing up was like get back from school, go out in the backyard, build trails. Like I love building trails. So I thought, you know, with Windrock and kind of that canvas there, I was like, man, if we had the opportunity to like just go nuts on this place in a few years, it could be like next level. So the opportunity came about, and then I got hurt, and I actually had enough time to like run some numbers and like put some pieces together and be like, all right, is this actually like feasible? And it looked good enough, and I was like, let's do it. So we ended up working out a deal and took that over, I think like beginning in November last year.
So how hands-on have you been? Have you actually been getting in the digger and like designing some of the trails?
Yeah, very hands-on with everything from, working on trails to parking lots to huge days in the machines to painting in the bike shop or anything and everything. We've been involved. We got a really good team there, a lot of talented people, but we've definitely been like very hands-on with everything. And we kind of had to be because we took it over, and we had the Tennessee National in March, which is a big race they've run there every year, and we wanted to keep it going. So pretty much in like 3 months, we built the new bike shop, all the new parking lots, the shuttle turnarounds, the road that connects to the shuttle road. Like it was a huge undertaking. So those first 3 or 4 months were, they were nuts. We were putting in like legit 100-hour work weeks, and it was pretty all in to get ready for that race, but it worked out. And everybody had a great time. And now that we kind of like got that done, we can breathe a little bit and now start working on trails and more of the fun stuff.
When you've got a project like that, it is like all consuming, isn't it? It just takes over everything.
Yeah, pretty much, especially when you have a deadline like that. We always laughed. It was really hard to have that deadline. It was almost unrealistic, but we were like, all right, let's just give it a go. I think we can make it happen.
It's the Elon Musk approach, isn't it?
It was just like give the deadline and then you don't have a choice. You're like, the race is happening whether you're ready or not. But yeah, I guess having that deadline's cool too, because it does push you just to like get it done. Like the projects don't linger on for 8 months or whatever. You just get it done in 3 and then you can move on. So in that way it was good, but it was a bit of stress for sure.
Okay, so meanwhile, High Performance Center in Whistler.
Yeah, so that is kind of in the making still. So I'm kind of like partnered into that, and we're still kind of deciding what we want to do. I'm going to be in Crankworks in 2 weeks, I guess, already. We're going to be staying there. There's some accommodations kind of attached to it. So we're going to look at the facility. I know the sauna and the cold plunge and all that's in. The gym equipment isn't in there yet. So we're going to look at that and kind of just deciding like what we want to do with it. That project's not like owned by myself. I'm just kind of like a part of how we can use it in the future and what we want to do with it. So, we're kind of thinking that through right now. I think to be able to have athletes out there, to train athletes, to do camps and clinics and all that, I think it'll remain kind of a private facility for the most part. So we would like to move in some medical stuff as well. Like I've got some kind of partnerships with a company called NeuroCatch, which is like a concussion testing device, but also like sports performance, like cognitive performance and all that. So I think we might have one of those in there, and some of the PT people that kind of work in and around like sports rehab and all that as well. So, but yeah, I think just where it's located and the riders that are up there, and kind of I'm starting to spend more time up there as well. It'll be kind of cool to see where that goes in the future.
Anything that can be done to improve concussion assessment, I think has got to be a good thing, because my experience, I experienced a concussion many years ago, and in the UK, the assessment for it was pretty woeful. And it was kind of insane, the sort of things that were going on inside my head, and no one really knew what was happening. So anything that can be done to improve that assessment method would be a breath of fresh air. Yeah,
for sure. I think that's what drew me to this NeuroCatch project or product is, it was kind of the same for us. Like we have riders that have had head injuries at races, and they're, shine a flashlight in their eye literally. And they're like, I think you're good. Go for it. Or like, maybe sit out. And I was like, man, if you could have like a point of care, like something that was just more efficient, gave you more solid data. So it wasn't so up to the rider to just kind of like make their own decision based off whatever they felt, and obviously there's pressures that come with that on both sides as well. We went up to Vancouver, and I did the testing with the product probably about a year ago. And it was pretty sweet. It fits in like a little briefcase, basically. It's like a 7-minute test. They just put it on your head. It like measures brain waves and stuff. And you can't learn the test and get better at it. So it's just like you kind of go through the test and it gives you a very non-biased result. Doesn't take any time at all to get the result. The machine's easy to use. So for me, I got a track to do it really quick. I was like, why does not every sports team and race and everything have one of these on site? Because it's way more advanced than what we're using now. So we'll see where that goes in the future. I'd like to get that onto the World Cup circuit next year at the latest, if possible, as well. But yeah, I think it's time to kind of make some advancements there.
In terms of performance, I want to talk about a training schedule for downhill riders, because not a lot is said these days about what downhill racers actually do to prepare for racing and to train for racing. And in particular, I'm not talking just physical exercise. Like, what other elements go into training as a downhill rider? Like, I'm talking nutrition, supplementation, sleep, stress, anxiety, sort of control, that kind of stuff. Do you go into that much detail?
Yeah, I think it's a little different for every rider depending on where your strengths and weaknesses are. You know, I think some riders would, for example, need to focus more on the physical side. Some riders probably need to focus a little bit more on the mental side, like wherever you're maybe a little bit weaker at, you put more effort in. But I would say across the board, everybody's probably, at least all the top guys, are doing a little bit of all of that. It used to be like just if you went to the gym 4 days a week, you were like really training. Now,
Sure.
It's like the way you train, when you train, how you train, your recovery programs, your mental stuff, your diet, your, even more than that, we're starting to do like mineral testing and all this other, blood work and all this stuff to kind of find out like, all right, where are you at? Like when you're not just eating healthy, but eating the right foods for your body and all that kind of stuff. So there's, I think as the sport gets more competitive and more guys are going fast, it's harder to find an advantage. So you start looking in more corners for more things. And that's kind of what's happening. So it's, a lot goes into it now. I would say like downhill now for sure is like a full blown top level, sport. The guys that are winning these races are like true, like world-class athletes.
My girlfriend's actually a health coach, and she is getting quite interested in the area of breath work and meditation as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's many riders that are looking into that area of preparation.
Yeah, I would say probably. I mean, I do a little bit of it when I'm racing too, like even oxygen loading before you drop in for your runs and stuff, kind of like what do they call them? Like the guys that dive way down and hold their breath all crazy.
Hyperventilating and stuff beforehand.
Yeah, kind of like you just load your body up with oxygen, and it kind of like, for me, it keeps that heart rate and that breath from just spiking real gnarly 30 minutes into a run. You've already got a bunch in you. So, I mean, it seems like the more we learn, the more you've kind of find out those things are important.
Just while it's on my mind and while you mentioned being at that start gate, that chainless run that is, I mean, you'll be known for that long after we're all gone. That moment when you rolled out the start gate and that happened, did you ever dream that you could win that race?
I don't know. Like, people have asked me that a bit, and I don't know that I had a lot of time to think about anything in the race. It was just, at first was frustration, obviously, because I qualified first. I felt like, I was the guy to beat that date. If I had my best run, nobody was going to beat me. I was obviously chasing the overall points. I wanted the points. That race kind of wrecked my overall win. I think the year prior, I think I would have won the overall the year before, but I flatted at that track, and that was the run where I like rode down the track on the rim, and it ended up costing me a title ultimately. And so I was like, man, like not again. And so, but yeah, I just kind of went into like point salvage mode straight away, where it was like, well, just get down and get as many points as you can get and try to limit the damage. And I remember at the top part of the track, I was feeling pretty good. And I was like, man, you're going pretty good. You're not losing a lot of time here. But they have that like paddly motorway section that everybody's familiar with now. And it used to be a lot worse. It used to come out of that turn before the straightaway with a lot less speed. Those jumps were smaller, so you didn't get these big pumps. And when I got onto the straightaway, it was the last year, they didn't film that, but I was rolling all the jumps and like pumping across the tables. And that's where I was like, nah, you're done. You're getting smoked.
What was everyone else doing?
Yeah, I don't know. So the top and the bottom of the track was really good, but that pedally section, I was like, nah, you're definitely giving away some time. So I was surprised. I remember by the bottom, as a run as a whole, I knew I had a little time to play with, but I didn't think that much. So I was like maybe a top 10, top 15. But I was definitely surprised when I crossed the finish and saw I won.
Wow.
But I mean, I won by like a half an inch or something.
Yeah.
It was really close.
Marginal gains and nutrition, etc. Just preparation. Now, when I was in California, I was lucky enough to ride with Mike Sinyard, founder of Specialized.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's a Santa Cruz thing, but microdosing is a thing which is quite popular over there, and mushrooms and sort of the way in which mushrooms and the use of things like that can improve your performance. And I knew nothing about it until I turned up at his sort of retreat, and I was just like, oh, okay, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And so we went out for a ride. I mean, he's in his 70s now, and that's just kind of what those guys rely upon. They just, quick whatever it is in those tablets, and away you go. I don't know if I can even share this. I might have to remove this from the podcast.
I know, it's like news to me.
Yeah. But like it seems like mushrooms are a thing, and they seem to be, like I've written down here, lion's mane mushrooms. They seem to help control both physical and mental stress and improve focus.
Yep.
Like I wonder whether stuff like that is being looked into by racers. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it a lot with like sports performance yet. I've heard of microdosing through podcasts and stuff like that with like special operators that come back from the military and stuff, and kind of helping with some of that type of trauma and brain issues and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I think traditional medicine is, you like pump yourself full of all this medicine, and that obviously probably has negative side effects in a lot of ways and whatever. So things that are more natural, I think, are starting to be looked at as more of a positive thing, less harmful on the body, and really could have some potential like good benefits to it. So I'm definitely not one to really talk about it because I don't know it that well, but I'm definitely starting to hear it, and I'm hearing of good results with people that they're not getting through other things. And I think overall, it seems logically to me like it would be healthier because it came from the earth and like created in a lab or whatever. So I think the research on that stuff would be awesome if we could just keep knowing more.
Yeah, I agree. The future is going to be interesting, I think, in that regard. Now, at one stage, you were completely dominant in downhill, and you had 8 US national championship wins, 5 World Cup overall titles. How much of that success would you attribute to physical, psychological superiority, or just pure skill on the bike? And a cop-out is saying it's all of the above.
Yeah, I was going to say it's really hard to pick one. It's kind of all of the above. I think it has changed over my career. I think when I first started racing, I felt like my fitness held me back more than my skills or my like mental ability.
Sure.
I felt like I could ride a lot faster. I just wasn't fit enough to ride at 100% from the start to the finish of a racetrack. Then as I got fitter, I felt like I could start putting those runs together. I feel like that's when I started winning, is I got a little better in a couple areas, and then my fitness was good enough to really run that pace. I got better definitely in certain conditions. When it was dry, I was pretty much fast straight away when I started racing, but I struggled in the wet and the roots and stuff just because I never rode that stuff. So it took me a while to kind of get pace in that. I had some really good teammates that helped me a lot those early years, and kind of learned, getting the bike dialed and all that as well. So, I think early on it was probably everything, but I definitely noticed like fitness was like the weak link. Like
Sure.
I had a hard time standing and sprinting to the finish line. Like my legs were just done.
Yeah.
And so I got stronger, and then I felt like that ended up being like a strength of mine, was like I was really strong. I could smash into stuff and not get tired and ride Valdesol and be just as fast at the bottom as I was at the top. And then, over the years, like, I don't know, it's hard to say, like, as it's gotten more competitive, you just can't afford to like be weak in any of those areas. And I think for me, a lot of it starts with my fitness and my bike setup, because it's like, if I know I'm strong, then mentally I feel good. If I know I'm like not as fit as I need to be, or if I'm struggling with the bike, then mentally you're like, all right, you kind of know you're at a handicap a little bit.
Sure.
So a lot of my like mental the confidence, I guess, just comes in my preparation and what I'm doing and knowing where I'm at. And I usually have a good sense for where I'm at and where I'm going to finish before the race even starts. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. I definitely think there's been some years I've struggled with bike setup, more recently, and that's been a tough one. And we had a lot of factors like with COVID and certain things that kind of delayed that progress and things we were working on. And then I've been having like a lot of weird injuries the last 4 or 5 years. So it's really hard to like spend consistent time on the bike and like really make progress when like every few months you're having to take more time off. So, but I mean, overall, I don't know, been fortunate. I've been on really good equipment and really good teams and everything for the most part. So it's mostly just all on me.
Yeah. I mean, your transition from motocross over to push bikes basically seemed to be fairly seamless in looking at it from the outside. And I mean, obviously there's a much longer journey that happened there, but would you say that you're, to come from a different sport, to come from the outside and then to just jump in and go, do you know what? I'll show these guys how it's done. Do you think that put you in mentally a really good place?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, it was funny because I've been chatting with some of the guys on my team and I've been thinking about it a little bit more. And I think when I started racing, it was like, I don't want to sound like dramatic, but to me, it was like I had stopped racing motocross at 17. I had some injuries and just kind of had gotten burned out. I'd been racing basically since I was 4 on BMX and then to motocross. And I was like, I just kind of don't want to have that stress and the injuries, the financial, like my parents were spending everything they had to try to help me go race. And I was just kind of like, this isn't fun anymore. So I stopped racing. And then for the next 3 years, I worked some really hard jobs for a little bit of money. Yeah. And, and I was kind of like waiting to kind of see like, what's next? Where do I want to go? I always believed I would find what I wanted to do and just put everything into it. I've always been that kind of a person where I'm just like, I find something and I get focused in and I'm just like, I want to be the best. Just like figure it out. But when I kind of thought the racing door had closed. So when downhill came around and I felt like I had another shot, I was looking at basically I was getting ready to start college and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I had worked some really hard jobs for a couple of years and kind of just matured a lot in those couple of years as well. So when I started racing, it was like, I kind of felt like it was sort of this do or die. Like you're either going to like really make this happen or you're just going to, go into the workforce and not that was going to be a bad thing. I think I would have found something good or business and I would have applied the same energy towards it. But I wasn't casual about trying to go fast. Let's say that. It was like, I want to be the best. I want to be better than everybody at everything on every track in every condition. Like I was very driven. Yeah. I was like, I want to make money doing this and actually have a career. Like I really like racing. I really don't like digging ditches and doing some of the other things. So it was like, for me, I think mentally, I was just like so committed and all in, and it was just all I did every day, all day. And I think making that choice, different riders have different reasons on why they, either do or don't put the effort in. And I think my why was like pretty strong, so to speak. And so it was like, I was just committed. And I think coming out of motocross had transitioned through like the Ricky Carmichael era of like hard work, just do more than everybody else, that kind of a vibe. He was known for his work ethic and that grind. And I'd kind of come out of that sport and had to, struggle a lot there. So when I got into downhill, it was like, I kind of wasn't messing around. Yeah. I was going to work really hard. And I was basically for the first year of my career on a race by race basis. Like if I did good enough at this race, Yeti would send me to another one. And then I'd do good enough. They'd be like, all right, well, let's send you to this one. And then let's, so it was like, kind of had to prove yourself every time out. And it was, I had a lot of ground to make up in a little bit of time. And I realized that. So I definitely took it real serious.
How much did you recognize at the time the sacrifice that your parents made in order to put you in that position? And how much of your drive came from that knowledge?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a big part. My parents were always so supportive. We didn't have a ton of money, but my parents were like, if this is really what you want to do, we'll give you every opportunity that we can. And if you don't want to do it anymore, please let us know because we're spending everything. And just their work ethic, you know, it was like my parents both were in the medical industry. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a physical therapist. They'd go to work all day long and then get home, work on my bikes, take me to the track, you know, go back to work the next day. I was just chatting with somebody the other day in the pits and I'm like, yeah, I remember my dad coming home 5 or 6 o'clock at night after a full day of work. We lived kind of out in the middle of the desert and he'd need like a little circlip or something for my dirt bike, like this little piece. And we were, you know, over an hour away, hour and a half from Chaparral Motorsports, which was the big motocross store in San Bernardino in California. And he's like, well, I need this part. I'll be back in 3 hours. He would just bail out, get there by 9 or 10 when they close, grab the little piece, come home, work on the bike till like midnight, 1 a.m, and go to work the next day. And that was just like what we did. So, I think between my parents and kind of their sacrifice and that kind of work ethic growing up, and then I had some coaches growing up. I was very fortunate, like even from a young age, like playing Little League baseball to, you know, my motocross coach. I had some guys that were very like influential on me and they were very supportive and encouraging, but kind of like slightly old school guys, you know, like, hey, if you want it, you're going to have to work for it. Sure. And they were not like giving you participation medals, let's say. And it was, they really pushed, like I just was around that a lot and I kind of had that grind in me from a young age because that was just what my parents did. And then being around these certain people, you know, even my motocross coach, we didn't have enough money to train as much as I needed to as I started really progressing. And he's like, hey, you can work off your lessons. If you want to work during the week, I'll train you 3 days a week. But, you know, you basically work 8-hour days, yard work and whatever else, just hard labor to pay for my training. And it was like, that's just what you did. And I enjoy it though. Like I like that, like really, my wife always laughs at me. She's like, you always find something and just have to make it harder than it needs to be because I just kind of like to suffer a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I think a lot of it was like just my mindset, my parents, my influence. Like I just, I don't know, I liked kind of grinding it out like that.
Yeah, I always spent my life trying to find the shortcut to whatever, to success, but you always end up taking the longer route for some reason. Yeah. I want to take a step back to some pivotal business moments in your career. So in 2015, you left Specialized to join YT. What did that mean for you financially and also in terms of the trajectory to starting your own race team?
Yeah, it was a totally different move at the time because when I was at Trek, that was my last program where it was like, I think my Red Bull deal was my only deal, maybe my goggle deal. Every other deal when I was at Trek was a team deal. So they were like, here's the gear you wear, here's the parts, here's your package of stuff. And then when I went to Specialized, because of my results, I had a bit of flexibility. So it was like, I was on Specialized frames and they were like, whatever else you want to run, go for it. But you're going to be on like the Specialized factory team. But I didn't need to run, you know, what their other guys were running. So I think I was running like SRAM drivetrain, Fox suspension, which like nobody ever did really. I think I was on like the team wheels and tires. But I had a lot of flexibility there, but I was still on their program. And then when we went to YT, that was basically the first team that was like, me kind of starting it from nothing. So when I started working with Martin Whiteley, we kind of used his setup. He was the team owner, team manager, his vehicles, all that stuff. But I put together all the sponsorship contracts, picked out all the parts, negotiated the deals. Like that was kind of like my full package of stuff that I had figured out. And Martin was like, whatever you want to do, I'll run the program for you if you can just, you know, put it together sponsor wise. And so that was like kind of that. And then when we went to Intense, it was basically that. And then me just hiring Todd as our team manager and then buying the vehicles, being the actual owner on paper. So it was like each team has kind of been a step in that direction. Yes. But yeah, they've all been a little bit different, but I don't remember the question. But yeah, the YT deal was definitely the first one that sort of transitioned from feeling like you were rotting for a brand to kind of having your own team and having people sponsoring your program instead.
And I mean, ultimately it's led to where we are now. So we got to talk about the move to Crestline, because it was a big surprise for everybody to see that happen. I mean, I was delighted to see it happen coming from an e-bike perspective.
Yeah.
And Crestline, of course, is probably best known for their e-bikes. So how did that come about? Was it right place, right time? Did Troyden approach you?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a journey, I guess, to get to that point. Like when Intense was kind of back and forth for a while, and I felt like some really good momentum going there with the program the last year I was there. The plan was to kind of stay, figure that out. They were going through some things that were going to make that a little bit difficult, and then it ended up just not being something that was feasible for them. And I was kind of in a spot where I was like I had said, I flew to China and Taiwan back years and years ago because I wanted to visit the frame factories and the assembly factories and kind of see how all that works. And I wanted to kind of like eventually someday potentially do my own bike brand, or kind of have a long-term home with a brand. Like I just didn't want to have to renegotiate and change teams every 3 years or 2 years or whatever and kind of be bouncing around. It was like at some point, especially towards the tail end of my career, I'm like, I would like to take all this kind of wisdom or whatever that I've built up over all the years and experience and like put it into a project that I can see it through long-term and not need to be like renegotiating that deal every other year.
Sure.
And so that was my hope, and we had chatted about that with Intense a little bit. And I was kind of chatting with different brands. So when I kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, you're in a position where it's like, you can kind of do whatever you want now. I was like, well, is now the time where I go after starting my own brand, or do I find a brand where I feel like we're very aligned and I can, partner there? So I was looking at a lot of different options where I was thinking about, let's just go race for another year or two and then kind of visit that in 2 more years. So I actually chatted with a lot of the big companies. I know a lot of people, past teams and brands I've ridden for. I've got a lot of friends and a lot of people I still talk to at those brands. And I kind of like, we sort of threw the idea around with a lot of people, and it just kind of came to the point where I think it was through my team manager, Todd. He had been chatting with Troyden about something, and he kind of knew where I was at and he kind of knew where they were at. And he's like, you might like reach out to them. There might be an interesting opportunity. I think they heard of kind of what I was looking for. And they were like, we would like to chat. So, I ended up calling Troyden and chatting, and it was kind of crazy. It's just sometimes things really don't fit. You're chatting with somebody and you're just like, you're both trying to find the angles, and you just kind of come to a mutual like, yeah, I don't think this is going to be the right thing. And then on other sides, sometimes you're just like, wow, there's just a lot of like mutual alignment here, and it just kind of falls together really easily. And that's kind of how it was with Troyden. Like straight away, I really liked his kind of vibe. I liked how he viewed business. I felt like we were very similar there. He was just focused on like quality over quantity. Like we just want to do things really well. We want to have great customer service. We want to like have the best bikes and just like have a lot of fun and do what we want to do. We don't want to do anything that isn't natural to us just to try to sell more bikes or do whatever. And they were in a position to be able to do that. And the more we talked about like kind of how we would view things in the future or whatever, it was just like, man, this seems like a really good fit. And I was just telling him kind of what I was looking for long term. And he's in a spot where they're obviously wanting to kind of expand that brand in the future. And it just was a really good fit. And so we, ended up kind of over a month or two kind of working out a deal, figuring out all the stuff, and kind of setting up a path for me to like achieve equal parts ownership with them as we meet certain targets here the next couple of years. And as I transition out of racing, I can kind of transition into that more on a timeline. So it just was for me a really good fit. And I saw the bikes. They have a great reputation, like everything about the brand. It was just kind of, if I was going to do it myself, I would kind of have done it like they were doing it. Sure. So that was kind of the thing to me that was like, yeah, this is cool.
I mean, their e-bike has a bit of a, should we say, Santa Cruz sort of silhouette to it. What is their approach to bike design? Like, how did Troyden end up where he is with the design of their bikes?
Yeah, I think for them, it's kind of funny because him and Mark, the other owner, I think they started mountain biking. They didn't start mountain biking until they were like in their 30s, mid 30s. And they're, I think, in their mid 40s now, and they are like legit rippers.
Wow.
Like rippers. Like I ride with them at their trails, and I can't keep up with them. Like
What?
they're really fast. And, and so they just like totally fell in love with riding. They ride like every day, you know, for the last 10 years or whatever. And I think they were riding Santa Cruz bikes. They really liked the feel of some of their bikes, but they're like, man, we really love these bikes. But if they would just do this and this and this different, they could be better. And so they started messing with links on the Santa Cruz bikes and kind of looking at geo and whatever, and kind of came to a point where they were like, man, like we should just make our own bike, because they had the contacts and the relationships to do it. And it just came from a passion of riding. I mean, that's why they do e-bikes, because they just love riding e-bikes and downhill bikes. So the first bike they ever produced was a downhill bike.
Right. Is that
they
right?
did like 50 of them. Yeah.
Okay.
And then they went into these e-bikes, and they just do them because that's what they love. They love gravity racing, and they ride them every single day. And so that was what drew me to it, because those are my two favorite bikes as well. And kind of everything they do is like very high end, very quality.
Yeah.
Like just let's try to make the nicest stuff, because that's to them the stuff they love to ride. So but kind of a crazy thing with them and kind of how that came along. But it's pretty cool, because you definitely have a brand where the owners are like so passionate about the bikes they ride. Like Troyden could pick apart and mark every piece of the bike, every part, the geo, like they know a lot of stuff that I feel it, but I don't know it. And so they're so in tune with kind of what they're trying to do and making.
Do you think they're going to scale production a bit more? Because whenever I check, everything's sold out.
Yeah, that's been our problem. So the downhill bikes, I think the initial run they did was 50 bikes, and they sold out. We had another like 25 we could kind of get out of that mold, and that's where our team bikes are, which is funny because he decided to put in the order to get the rest of those bikes before we started talking. And if he wouldn't have done that, like we wouldn't even have bikes to ride.
Whoa, is that right?
Yeah, because it was like a prototype mold, I guess. So they make them quicker, but you can only get like 75 bikes or so out of them. So they did downhill bike. Now they do the e-bikes, and they just do limited runs, you know, like from 100 to 350 or whatever. And I think he saw the industry was kind of slowing down a little, and he's like, I just didn't want to stress it. Like we do small quantities and kind of do what we want to do. Let's like scale back a little next year. And so we've come out with a couple of like limited runs of bikes, but then they just sell out in a few weeks or a month, and most of them pre-sell, and we're like, dang, we should have made more.
Yeah, totally.
So, and we're selling them all at like full retail. Like we're just, I don't know, but I think the bikes are really good. So the people that get it, the customers we have now, like the following we have is, you know, people love it. And I think it's cool because people, you know, if you ride a Crestline, like you connect directly to the brand. Like if you send an email or you whatever, most likely you're probably going to talk to Troyden directly, and he's going to help you out. And so I think that's what was so cool to me. I think you have like amazing products, and then you treat your customers really well, and that's kind of everything. So yeah, we definitely have plans to expand. Now that I'm back on the downhill bike riding, we need to open a new mold for that frame. So we've just been waiting for me to put some hours in, so I can kind of see like if we want to tweak it a little or change it, we can do that. You know, when we spend the money for the new molds, we'll have a couple of sizes coming in the next round. So definitely want to do downhill bikes. Definitely got a lot of e-bike things coming out in the next couple of years that we're already working on. And then we'd like to do trail bikes and some other stuff as well. So it's kind of all in the works. We're just kind of starting to work on it now.
So Crestline have got the full power e-bike, which is is it called the RS 180 now, I think?
Yep.
Yeah, I think Rob Rides, thank you for renaming that. I think he is quite involved in simplifying the name, shall we say.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was called before. 7550 or something, was it?
Yeah, basically the e-bike we have now, it's compatible, I think, with like 3 different travel options, if you change the link and a couple of other little things. So yeah, the latest one is a 180, which is kind of crazy because that was the first one I ever rode, and it's like feels like you can smash everything on that bike, but it doesn't really feel like a 180 on the flatter trails.
Right.
It like actually feels like a smaller travel bike. So it's like a way more versatile bike I've found than what you would think of a 180. We have our bikes here, our trainer bike set up, I think at like 165, 170s. But yeah, there's like a lot of versatility in them.
To you, downhill ride is anything less than 180 or 190 is like trail bike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's my trail bike 180. I used to even call my e-bikes.
Well, that does the job. Do you enjoy riding an e-bike, or do you find the added weight a bit of a hindrance?
No, I love it. It's all I ride.
Is it really?
Yeah. I always joke with people. I'm like, you think I ride downhill? Like, it's not a game. Like, I ride downhill because I really don't like to ride uphill. But no, I do enjoy pedaling and suffering and all that. But I think for me, like, I love riding downhill. I like riding with my friends. I like, on an e-bike, you can cover so much more ground quicker, and for me, a lot of the times, in California, but even Tennessee now, if I go ride, a lot of these trails are like, you're going up and then you have a different down trail and you pedal back up and different trail. So it was like on a regular bike in an hour and a half, you might do 3 or 4 runs, where on an e-bike you can do like over double or whatever. And for me, it's just like way more fun. Like, you can still hammer, but you're going faster. You can do a lot of laps, and that's, to me, like what I love. And I think as long as you have the power, I don't really notice the weight. If you were riding the bike turned off or something, it'd feel heavy. But if you have the thing turned on, the way it accelerates, especially the Crestline with that Bosch race motor that is in that thing, like, it rips and the thing is sick.
Yeah, motor development is really interesting. Like, there's so much happening there right now. So I can't wait to see the weight of bikes start to come down a little bit and the power of the motor start to come up a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how the next 3 to 5 years go with e-bikes and how they kind of start to blend into what a normal pedal bike would be and what your options could be there.
Yeah, we could go so far into that, but leave it for another day. Now, I want to go up to risk taking. What with your business exploits and sporting success in a sport that requires you to take massive risks on a regular basis, what led you down this path? And were you comfortable with taking risks from a young age?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not somebody that takes like blind risk though, whether it's riding or whatever. Even as a kid, I would consider myself definitely more calculated than most of my friends too, or my riding buddies. I have like the skill and talent or whatever, but I always would like eye something up for a while as a kid. Like, if it was a big dirt jump or something, like, I want to make sure as much as possible that I'm going to be able to like pull that off first try. Like, I don't want to have a bunch of crashes. And like, I wasn't like, some of my friends just like huck it and just like hope for the best. And that's definitely not me. But I think, you just, there's a lot of risk in just riding that fast, even no matter how calculated you are. And I think so, just growing up racing bikes since I was 4, my dad was really into street bikes and surfing. And, my mom did a lot of the same types of thing when she was younger. And she was like doing like bodybuilding when I was a kid. And so I was just kind of grew up in a family that was like very active, kind of used to those types of sports and different things as well. And so I think it was just a lot of fun, like from an early age. I used to go to school every day on like the back of my dad's motorcycle as like a little kid. And I just always like going fast and doing that. So I think it came more natural to me. And I think I've just, I'm more calculated, but I think, a lot of things to me that are the most fun things in life, whether it's sports or even in business, like, they do require an element of risk, and that's just kind of part of the deal. So you work hard, you prepare as much as you can to kind of limit that as much as possible. But I've found that the things I enjoy the most, they kind of always just come with a bit of risk. I guess you can't guarantee success in any of them.
I think it's a common trait in successful people is the ability to quantify risk. But most very successful people probably push it further to the risky like end of the spectrum that most people would be uncomfortable with.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is like, you can't be afraid to fail. Like, if you look at like each project or each race individually or something, you might be like, all right, there's some like risk here. But if you look at the mindset, the preparation, and kind of like where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish, it's like, I might fail a few times, but eventually, if I keep kind of following this process, like, I believe eventually it's going to be successful. Yeah. So like, you believe the risk will take off or pay off. And so it's like, it's not just, I don't know, risk as some people would see it, I guess.
I think conviction is probably a better word.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Talking of risk, would you ever do an event like Hardline?
Yeah, I think for me, the event itself, the risk is not too crazy if it was a standalone. I think I've just never done it because it's like during a World Cup season, or it's like right, on the backside of a World Cup season. And I think when you're trying to race, for me, World Cup titles are like everything. And so if it's something that's going to put like more risk to potentially mess that up, I'm like, I would like to do it, but I just want to stay focused here. I want to train. I want to do the things that are going to make me the best for this series. So that's why I've never done it. And then when the race season is over, I'm just like usually so stoked to just go home and ride for fun and not have to be on the clock anymore, that I'm like, I don't really want to add more races to my schedule. So it's a tough one. I mean, Red Bull used to invite me to Rampage early on in my career, when like G was doing it and all that. And it was something that I think would have been a lot of fun. But I don't know, when you look at big picture and you're kind of like weighing like, what am I going to get out of this versus what am I trying to do over here? It's a tricky one. I mean, even this year, like Jackson is kind of in that situation where it's like very legitimately was the title contender for the World Cup title this year and world champs, and got hurt at one of those events. And it's like, I think when you're younger, you're like, let's just race more, do more. And I think that's something as I've gotten older, you're like, you kind of weigh the risk a little bit, and you kind of pick where it's worth taking and where you're like, it's going to be a kind of a bummer to miss this, but I feel like it's the wise decision. So it's different for everybody. But for me, I was just so focused on the World Cups that I just tried to do everything that is going to make me the best there and kind of nothing more.
That river gap was pretty insane, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty nuts.
Jim Monroe's sort of sky through
yeah, pretty sick.
Oh, wow.
But I love it because I love watching those events. So I'm glad a lot of those guys do it. And we'll see. Maybe the next couple of years as things kind of change for me and I'm maybe doing more of a select schedule, I try to do a few of those.
What advice could you give young people or anyone really looking to embark on a less conventional career and just step outside the mold?
Yeah, I guess it's
a broad question. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. I know I was like in the context of biking, but yeah, if you're talking about everything, I think if you find something you love to do, and you hear it a lot, but it's a lot harder to work really hard at something you like to do. And I think if it carries you through the hard work longer too. I think you can make the choice to just work hard at something you don't like, and that's part of life. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't like, or parts of the job that I don't like, and you just need to do it every day because that's, part of what you want to do. But I think, I think if you can establish your belief on what you want to do and why you want to do it, I think that kind of carries you through a lot. If you know why you're doing it and you kind of, you believe like it's worth putting this effort in, even if ultimately I'm not successful, like that process, I'll find success eventually. And so it's, I don't know, if you can find the thing you love, I think it definitely can carry you maybe a bit further. And I've always loved riding my bike. So I don't love all the things kind of that need to go into like winning on Sunday, but I definitely love winning.
Yeah.
And I love that winning pays me enough money that I have 8 months of off season to then ride my bike for fun.
Yeah.
So it's like, they all kind of feed each other. So it's, I don't think anything is going to be fun all the time. It's a lot of hard work, but for me, I've always just loved riding my bike. So it's not hard for me to like just get up and go ride.
Do what you love.
Yeah.
Definitely helps.
If you can, for sure.
Let's finish with some downhill chat. Season has been wide open so far, don't you think?
Yeah, pretty good. I think Loic's the man to beat.
Yeah.
I think he's answered some questions this year. I think that I even had where it's like, well, if he could do this or that. Valdesol, wasn't the result he wanted. That's always been kind of a bad track for him, but it's still a better result this year than it has been in years past. So he's still making progress there. So yeah, I think it is wide open. Anything could change at any time, but I really feel like consistently throughout this season, if he doesn't have any injuries or anything, he's going to be very difficult to beat in the title chase.
Loic was winning before and Finn was riding brilliantly as well, but how much do you think that this suspension adjustment on the fly is helping to improve that performance?
I think it's helping, but I think he looks really good on the bike. I think the bike is working really good. That team, I think, is doing all the right things. When you talk about searching every little nook and cranny for an advantage, it seems like they're not leaving any boxes unchecked. So I think their equipment is really good. But even Loic himself, you can tell like where he's made progress from last year to this year. Like that's not just like because the bike's a little better. Like he's been working on some things and you're just seeing that work pay off now. I think he looks better than I've ever seen him. So, yeah, I mean, you just see that. I mean, to be a champion year after year after year, you've got to find ways to step up, to progress, to work on your weaknesses. And I think you see him doing that. I think with Jackson coming out and winning a few races last year, it was a little bit of a, like, you know, these young kids coming up. Same with Jordan winning the first one last year. It was like, all right, we got to step it up again here. And so I think he's just continuing to do that, but he's able to find those advantages without like riding out of control. So his results are very consistent and steady. That's what I always tried to do as well. I didn't want to need to have my absolute best run to win. You know, I wanted there to be a little bit of a margin there. And it seems like that's kind of where he's at. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. But I mean, that ride Amory put in Val d'Isole a couple of weeks ago, like, I mean, they were conditions that kind of suited him. And he even said like it was a little better, that the track was a little slower and a little slicker. But I think confidence-wise, what he got from that, and as he's going to continue progressing, I mean, it was the Loic and Amory show before Amory got hurt, and I think it's going to potentially get back to that here the next few races.
Do you think that was one of the greatest runs? Do you think we'll look back on that in the future?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was definitely it was one of the biggest winning margins we've had in a lot of years. It was definitely one of those races where you watch it and you just, you know, recently it's been so tight when you watch the top guys, they all look pretty similar. Yeah. You could pick apart like a little here, little there. But that race, you were like noticeably like he just looks faster everywhere than everybody. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah, so for me, definitely one of the most impressive rides I've ever seen.
Dakota as well, his bars. Like, do you think that's going to catch on? Like, because it seems to work for him on the steeper tracks.
Yeah, I think there'll probably be some guys trying it, but that is such an extreme setup. Like, I've ridden his bike around in the pits and stuff plenty, and I'm just like, Jack Moore was a little bit like that too. Like, I get on their bikes and I'm like, you guys are joking with this, right? Like, this feels insane. I'm kind of the opposite. I've always liked a bit of a lower front end. As soon as I bring my front end up just a little, even if it's a 5 millimeter spacer, I feel like I'm starting to get disconnected from the front wheel, and I don't have a lot of feel, and it feels too far. Like, and I ride low on the bike, more aggressive. That's how I've always kind of ridden. And so it's like, I just don't feel fast with a setup like that. I'm not patient enough to run a setup like that either. Like the way you watch him ride, like how methodical, how patient he is. Like I like to just charge and slam into stuff. And, but yeah, so I think there'll be a lot of people trying it. I think they for sure should release that bar. I think he'd probably make a lot of money on it right now.
Yeah, it's true.
People would want to try it. And, I think it's awesome, and I love that he's just doing what he wants to do. You know, it's like he's always been like, even when he was on the team, he gets something in his head and he's like, I want to try this. I think it will be better, and it doesn't matter who's criticizing or who, whatever. It's just like he's looking for a feeling and a setup, and he's going after it, and it's like validated through his results for him. It works. So I think it's pretty cool to have that kind of diversity.
Definitely. No, I can't wait to see how the season turns out. And also Leger this weekend.
Yeah, I know. I'm rooting for him. I hope he gets his first win.
Yeah, we'll see. The Frenchies are quite hard to
they're going to be hard to beat here. Got a pretty good track record.
Absolutely. Yeah, so having your insights on the commentary has been great, but we definitely want to see you back racing again soon. So, yeah, hopefully we don't have to wait too long.
Yeah, thanks, man. We're excited to get back, potentially be racing in Crankworks here in a couple of weeks, and then we'll see you on Worlds and Ludenville, but hopefully in the next month or two.
Amazing. Thanks for joining me, and yeah, hopefully we can talk again maybe when the season's over.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. And maybe we can ride some e-bikes one day.
Let's do it. Anytime I rode today, I'm ready.
Nice one. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.